What if everything you've ever believed about luck was wrong? What if those moments you called coincidence, chance, or miracle were not gifts of fortune at all, but the direct result of a hidden power working silently within you? Has this ever happened to you? You think someone is simply lucky, only to realize they repeatedly create extraordinary outcomes in ways that seem almost impossible to explain? Today we're going to dive into that very mystery, exploring the illusion of chance and the deeper forces that may actually be shaping our lives. But before we begin, please hit the like button and let me know where in the world you're watching from today. It's always fascinating seeing who's joining us from around the world. For centuries, humanity has been spellbound by the idea of luck. We've looked at improbable events, winning a lottery, escaping danger, stumbling upon an unexpected opportunity, and labeled them as random, outside our control, unpredictable. We bow to luck like it is some divine force that blesses a chosen few and abandons the rest. But what if luck isn't random at all? What if behind every so-called miracle there lies a precise creative mechanism, one that anyone can access if they only learn how? Stay with me until the end, because what you're about to discover might surprise you. Think of those individuals who seem to defy the odds again and again. They don't just get lucky once, they continue to attract outcomes that others call impossible. From winning multiple contests to manifesting wealth or opportunities that statistics say should never happen twice, their lives become living proof that chance is not what it appears to be. And when we look deeper, the common thread becomes clear. It isn't random, it is intention. It is imagination. It is a creative consciousness at work beneath the surface. Science often explains events through probability, statistics, and averages, yet every exception to the rule, every anomaly that cannot be explained by numbers, points us toward something more profound. Beyond statistics lies a conscious state, a deliberate inner design that quietly alters the field of possibility. Those who tap into this power know that what appears as coincidence is, in truth, creation. And if that is true, then luck is not luck at all. It is a misunderstood form of mastery. Think about your own life for a moment. How many times have you dismissed a breakthrough as pure chance? How many times have you said, "I was just lucky," instead of asking what internal state, what invisible pattern, might have opened the door for that event to happen? What if you could learn to recreate those breakthroughs on purpose? Imagine what would change if you no longer waited for fortune to smile on you, but instead learned to design your own outcomes. This is where the real adventure begins, breaking free from the myth of chance and uncovering the mechanics of deliberate creation. We are talking about moving from being passive receivers of good luck to conscious architects of reality itself. Stay with me, because in the next moments you'll begin to see how imagination, focus, and disciplined inner vision are not abstract ideas, but practical tools to shift probability in your favor. And this is not about superstition or wishful thinking. It's about recognizing that behind the curtain of coincidence lies a law, an invisible structure that rewards consistency of thought, clarity of imagination, and depth of feeling. Those who learn how to use it discover that what others call miracles become repeatable, almost predictable. So let me ask you again, what if luck has nothing to do with it? What if the so-called miracles you've admired in others are, in fact, a reflection of a power you already hold? Stay tuned, because as we peel back the layers of this illusion, we'll uncover the method, the testimony, and the living proof that chance is not chance at all. And in just a moment, we'll step into the first real key that changes everything. If these ideas are resonating with you, consider subscribing so you can keep exploring this journey with me. When you look closely at the stories of people like AJ and Elena, it becomes harder and harder to cling to the belief that luck alone explains their repeated success. AJ didn't stumble into a win at the horse races as though fate rolled dice in his favor. Elena didn't manage to win thousands of contests because chance smiled on her more than anyone else. What both of them tapped into was something far more deliberate, a kind of inner direction that guided their imagination with precision. Behind the scenes of what many dismiss as coincidence, there was a consistent mental practice, a hidden truth about how consciousness interacts with reality. This is where the idea of imagination takes on an entirely new meaning. For most people, imagination is entertainment, daydreams, or wishful thinking. But what if imagination, when sustained in deep states of awareness, is not fiction at all but a law in motion? What if every vivid scene held in your mind with conviction begins to organize reality itself around that image? Think about the impact of this revelation. If imagination is generative, then outcomes are not accidents, and the line between fantasy and experience becomes thinner than we were taught to believe. Consider how transformation actually happens. It isn't through waiting passively for circumstances to change. It is born from the decisions we make about what pictures we allow to live within us. AJ's decision to rehearse a single scene over and over again until it felt more real than memory itself was not a matter of superstition. It was a demonstration of law. Elena's ability to repeatedly envision herself as the winner until her nervous system accepted that identity wasn't a gamble. It was a mindset practiced with discipline. These examples are more than inspiring stories. They are living proof that the so-called improbable can be replicated when imagination becomes structured intention. Behind all of this lies a fascinating journey into how the mind works. Science tells us that the brain doesn't clearly distinguish between what is vividly imagined and what is physically lived. That means your inner theater can leave the same imprint on your system as an actual event. The consequence is profound. The internal narrative you sustain begins to rewire your emotions, your physiology, and eventually your external circumstances. This is why the book insists that imagination is not mere fantasy, but a vibrational law. You could even call it the hidden architecture of destiny, operating quietly behind the scenes, waiting for you to take the director's seat. The more we explore this, the clearer it becomes that nothing is truly random. What looks like luck from the outside is, in reality, the visible shadow of an invisible design. Each thought, each image, each emotional rehearsal is a seed, and when held long enough, it has no choice but to bloom into experience. This is not about clinging to illusions or deceiving yourself with fake optimism. It is about recognizing the blueprint already at work within your consciousness and choosing deliberately which patterns you will continue to feed. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, into the very mechanics of how imagination, when guided by inner direction, bends the probabilities that most people resign themselves to. Because once you understand that what appears as chance is actually creation, you begin to see the world differently. You begin to see yourself differently. And before we move forward, I'd like to hear from you. Write in the comments, "This makes sense to me," if you've ever felt that so-called coincidences in your life carried a deeper meaning than random chance. What makes all of this even more powerful is that we are not talking about vague philosophies or poetic metaphors, but about a methodology, something you can follow, practice, and apply in the same way you would learn a new skill. That is why the book does not limit itself to inspirational stories. It lays out a structure, a testimony of people who have applied these principles, and a clear method that anyone willing to engage deeply can use to transform desire into lived experience. Think about the impact of this. Instead of drifting through life, hoping circumstances align in your favor, you are given a framework that shows you how to design outcomes from within. It is like stepping behind the scenes of reality itself and realizing you are not just an actor waiting for cues, but the one writing the script. This practical approach changes the entire mindset around what many still call luck. Waiting for miracles implies passivity, like standing at a station hoping the right train arrives by chance. But provoking miracles means stepping onto the tracks of your own destiny, designing them with intention, shaping them with imagination, and fueling them with persistence. The hidden truth is that life responds with far more accuracy to what is sustained deliberately than to what is merely wished for. And this is where the real transformation begins. When you understand that miracles are not rare exceptions granted to a chosen few, but laws that can be activated through conscious design. Behind every testimony you hear, whether it's the veteran who turned his financial struggles into abundance, or AJ manifesting Improbable victories. There lies the same structure. They weren't waiting. They weren't praying to luck. They were rehearsing inner images with such conviction that their nervous system accepted those images as fact, and reality followed. This is not superstition. This is the alignment of inner architecture with outer manifestation. And once you grasp this, the decisions you make about what to imagine, what to sustain, and what to emotionally embody become the most important choices of your journey. It might seem unusual to call imagination a law, but consider for a moment how every great innovation, every artistic masterpiece, every social change began. Before it was visible, it existed as an image, a scene rehearsed and refined in someone's mind. That inner theater was the first draft of reality. When you think of it this way, provoking miracles doesn't sound mystical at all. It sounds practical, almost inevitable. What we call a miracle is nothing more than the externalization of an inner blueprint, one that was carefully and often stubbornly held until it crystallized in the physical world. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because the true key lies not just in understanding the method, but in experiencing it, in learning how to hold a scene so vividly that your body believes it already happened. That is the line where imagination stops being fantasy and starts becoming law. And when you reach that point, you no longer ask if something is possible. You begin to live as though it already is. Write in the comments, "I'm also on this path," if you feel that provoking miracles instead of waiting for them resonates with you. For generations, people have spoken about luck as though it were some mysterious goddess who chooses her favorites without logic or reason. Entire cultures have built rituals around pleasing this invisible force, while others have cursed it when fortune seemed to turn against them. But when you strip away the myth, what you find is that luck is little more than a name we give to what we don't understand. The hidden truth is that destiny is not thrown to us from outside. It is shaped quietly within. Every decision you make about how you think, how you imagine, and how you hold an inner state becomes part of a larger equation that eventually defines the course of your life. It may sound poetic, but there is nothing abstract about it. Consider the impact of those who break patterns that should have held them back. They rise from obscurity, overcome impossible odds, or repeat extraordinary achievements so consistently that calling it luck feels hollow. Behind the scenes, the secret is always the same: imagination directed with discipline. When you understand this, statistical anomalies stop looking like accidents and start revealing themselves as evidence of an inner science. Numbers may say that winning a contest thousands of times is improbable, or that manifesting the same result twice in a row is nearly impossible. Yet there are people who defy those odds repeatedly. What they share is not fortune, it is mindset. This is where the journey becomes fascinating, because it invites you to look at your own story differently. How many times have you dismissed your own victories as chance, instead of recognizing that they came from a moment of clarity, a moment where your inner world was fully aligned with the outcome you wanted? Think about how often you've replayed a scene in your mind, sometimes intentionally, sometimes unconsciously, and then watched it unfold in reality with surprising accuracy. These are not coincidences. They are revelations about the relationship between thought and manifestation, about the power imagination has when it becomes more than a fleeting daydream. As you take in these reflections, remember you can subscribe and stay connected to every new step of this transformation. The fiction of luck has kept countless people waiting, hoping, even fearing, as though they were powerless pieces on a cosmic board game. But when you see the truth, everything shifts. You are no longer the pawn, you are the one moving the pieces. The impact of this realization is profound, because it means you are never as stuck as you believe, never as limited by probability as you've been taught. The so-called exceptions are not exceptions at all, but previews of what becomes possible when imagination is practiced with consistency and conviction. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because the real question is not whether luck exists, but how far the creative reach of imagination can extend when it is treated as a law, not a fantasy. This is where the hidden architecture of reality begins to reveal itself, and where your own journey toward deliberate creation truly begins. And before we continue, Share your perspective with me. Write in the comments, luck is an illusion, if you've ever felt that what others called chance in your life was really the result of something much more intentional. One of the most striking demonstrations of how imagination can rewrite the course of a life comes from the story of a veteran who returned from war in the 1950s. His life seemed trapped in limitation. He worked tirelessly for wages that barely sustained him, climbing so slowly that after a decade, he had only managed to move from $25 a week to $600 a month. For many, this would have been the end of the story. An ordinary man resigned to modest means, living under the weight of what society told him was possible. But something happened that shifted his path entirely. He discovered Neville Goddard's teachings, and within them, a chapter that would change everything. The practice known as the scissors of revision. The method was deceptively simple, but the impact was profound. Each night before sleep, the veteran would revisit the events of his day, but not as they had unfolded. Instead, he reimagined them as he wished they had happened. A missed opportunity was transformed into a successful meeting. A harsh word became an encouraging one. A rejection turned into acceptance. In the theater of his mind, he used the scissors of revision to cut away the experiences he no longer wanted to carry, and replace them with scenes that aligned with his deepest desires. To anyone looking from the outside, it might have seemed like harmless fantasy, but the hidden truth is that his nervous system was learning to respond to these new versions as though they were real. The transformation was staggering. Within 2 years of practicing this discipline, his income grew to match that of the President of the United States. Imagine that. A man who had spent years trapped in financial struggles suddenly experiencing exponential growth, not through sheer effort or blind luck, but through the deliberate redesign of his inner world. The journey he embarked upon was not one of external struggle, but of internal mastery. He proved that revising the past in imagination could alter the trajectory of the future in ways that defied every logical expectation. When you think about it, this practice is revolutionary because it challenges the rigid way we view time. We've been conditioned to believe that the past is fixed, a permanent sequence of events that can only be remembered, never rewritten. Yet the veteran's story reveals that memory is not set in stone, but is pliable, responsive to the images we choose to sustain. Every time he rehearsed a different version of his day, he was not only altering his perception of the past, but planting seeds that rippled forward into his reality. This behind-the-scenes work of the imagination is what gave him access to outcomes most would label impossible. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because the scissors of revision are not only about transforming external circumstances like income or career. They reach into something much more intimate, the way you carry your personal history, the meaning you attach to your failures, and the energy you bring into each new decision. The veteran's journey shows us that by editing the emotional weight of the past, you liberate yourself from patterns that would otherwise repeat endlessly. In other words, you reclaim authorship over your own timeline. And perhaps the most fascinating part is this: when you stop reliving your scars and start rewriting them, the world outside you begins to rearrange itself in astonishing harmony. Write in the comments, "I can rewrite my story," if you feel the power of this practice resonates with your own journey. AJ's story takes this principle even further, showing us that imagination is not only capable of softening the past, but of constructing futures that defy every calculation of probability. What he set out to achieve was considered absurd by anyone who understood the mechanics of betting: a sequential win across multiple horse races. The odds were astronomical, the kind of gamble people dismiss as pure fantasy. Yet AJ did not approach it as a gambler. He approached it as a creator, rehearsing an inner scene so detailed, so precise, that his body began to believe it had already happened. In his mind, he wasn't hoping to win. He was already standing at the counter, tickets in hand, feeling the paper against his fingers, sensing the quiet thrill of certainty as he tucked them inside his shirt. This is where the hidden truth becomes undeniable. The mind does not easily separate imagination from memory when the imagery is vivid enough. To AJ, the imagined event was not a rehearsal. It was a lived experience replayed again and again until it carved itself into his nervous system. And when the external world delivered the result, a check equivalent to nearly $1 million in today's terms, it was not an accident. It was a mirror reflecting back the state he had sustained with discipline. This was not blind chance or a whimsical miracle. It was the impact of inner direction crystallized into form. If something here sparked an insight, this is the perfect moment to subscribe and not miss the upcoming revelations. The most fascinating part is the way AJ's journey reveals the behind-the-scenes process of manifestation. He did not flood his imagination with a dozen different desires, nor did he approach it with desperation. He selected one scene, one outcome, and devoted himself to living it internally until the boundary between thought and reality dissolved. That level of focus is rare, and it is why most people never witness results that seem miraculous. They scatter their energy, change their vision daily, or treat imagination like a passing distraction. AJ, on the other hand, treated it like law. His mindset was not maybe, but already. This is where we see the true transformation. When imagination is no longer used as escape, but as construction. Each detail he added, what the counter looked like, how the tickets felt, the sensation in his chest as he received the payout, wasn't decoration, it was architecture. Those sensory decisions built a framework so solid that his subconscious had no choice but to accept it as reality. And once the subconscious accepts something as fact, the external world begins to rearrange itself to match. This is the hidden science of creation, the kind that statistics cannot measure, but experience continues to prove. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because AJ's first manifestation was not an isolated event. What followed revealed an even greater revelation, that once the subconscious is convinced, results can multiply in ways that defy logic. His story didn't end with one improbable check. It opened a doorway into the replicable nature of creation itself. Write in the comments, imagination builds reality, if you recognize how AJ's inner rehearsal turned into undeniable evidence in his outer world. AJ's second manifestation was even more astonishing than the first, not because of the sum involved, but because of what it revealed about the deeper mechanics of creation. By what looked like a simple mistake, he had duplicated his tickets, and instead of disqualifying his bet or reducing his chances, that error multiplied his winnings. What was supposed to be 36,000 grew into more than 88,000. To the average observer, this was a lucky break, the kind of fluke that makes headlines. But to anyone who understands the hidden truth of how imagination works, this was not luck at all. It was intention overflowing into form, a state so firmly imprinted in his subconscious that even accidents conspired in his favor. This is where Neville Goddard's teaching about the law of reversibility becomes crucial. If winning money can produce feelings of joy, freedom, and security, then by the same law, sustaining those inner states deeply enough can generate the external event of winning money. The cause and effect relationship does not only run in one direction. The journey can be reversed, and when the internal reality is cultivated with precision, the outer reality has no choice but to align. What AJ demonstrated with his duplicated tickets was not a stroke of chance but the impact of this law in action. He had lived so fully in the state of already possessing his winnings that the world responded, adjusting itself to confirm his inner certainty. Think about the implications of this for a moment. We are taught that emotions follow circumstances. You feel joy when good news arrives. You feel relief when the problem is solved. You feel secure once the money is in your account. But what if those emotions are not just results, but also instruments? What if joy, relief, and security are not merely effects, but tools you can wield to shape what comes next? The veteran who revised his past had already shown how imagination could alter memory and transform the trajectory of life. AJ's second win proved that the same principle could stretch forward, creating outcomes that mathematics would insist were impossible. Behind the scenes, the mind was not passively waiting for events to dictate its state. It was generating the events by holding the state first. This is more than philosophy. It is a hidden architecture that governs how experiences take shape. The mindset of waiting places you at the mercy of probability, but the mindset of inner direction flips the equation. you begin to see that the outer world is not a fixed stage, but a mirror, reflecting back the scenes rehearsed in silence. The revelation here is profound. If you can enter into the feeling of your wish fulfilled, if you can embody that state as naturally as you embody your current reality, then the law of reversibility ensures the world bends to match it. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because once you grasp this law, the question is no longer whether you can create results, but how to hold those inner states so steadily that they become unshakable foundations. This is where imagination stops being a game of what if and starts becoming a science of deliberate transformation. Write in the comments, inner state creates outer reality. If you can sense how AJ's so-called accident was really proof of a larger law at work. When we look at reality through the lens Neville offered, the boundary between mind and matter starts to dissolve. We are used to treating them as opposites, as if thought were intangible mist and matter were the only solid truth. But what if they are not opposites at all, but polarities of the same essence, vibrating at different speeds? Matter is the slow rhythm, dense and visible. Mind is the rapid vibration, invisible yet just as real. And because they share the same root, they can translate into one another. This hidden truth is unsettling at first, because it means the world outside you is not independent of the world within. It is its mirror, its echo, its extension. The impact of this revelation is that your imagination is not just fantasy. It is the blueprint from which your external life is built. Imagine for a moment an architect drafting plans for a house. The drawing is not the house, yet without it, no structure can rise. In the same way, your mental images are the invisible sketches that reality follows with uncanny precision. When AJ rehearsed the feeling of holding those tickets, or when the veteran revised his memories, before sleep they were not indulging in daydreams, they were laying down architectural plans, and reality, obedient to those designs, built accordingly. The journey from thought to manifestation is not magic, but translation. What you sustain inwardly is copied outwardly with remarkable fidelity. Behind the scenes, your subconscious mind is the construction site where these blueprints are stored. It does not argue, it does not analyze, it accepts. Once a plan is accepted, the world begins to reorganize itself to match. This is why the scattered thoughts and fleeting wishes most people carry never manifest into anything consistent. They are like sketches drawn and discarded before the builder even has time to begin. But when an image is held with persistence and emotional conviction, when it is repeated until the nervous system reacts as though it were real, then the plan becomes fixed. And once fixed, it must be replicated. While we go deeper, think about subscribing. That way, you'll always have access to messages that support your growth. Think about the hidden architecture of your own life. Every decision, every repeated thought, every image you dwell upon is not neutral. It is laying lines on the blueprint of your future. The mindset you choose each day, whether rooted in scarcity or abundance, fear or confidence, is carving out the design of what will come. This is why Neville insisted that imagination is law, not superstition. To dismiss imagination as mere fantasy is like dismissing the architect's drawing as meaningless. The structure may not stand yet, but its outline already exists, and the builder, your subconscious, has already begun to work. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because if imagination is indeed the blueprint of reality, then the quality of the images you choose to sustain becomes the most important responsibility of your inner life. And once you grasp this responsibility, you begin to understand that nothing around you is random. It is a mirror faithfully reflecting the plans you have already drafted within. Write in the comments, "My mind is the blueprint." If you recognize how every image you hold today is already shaping the reality you will step into tomorrow. The universe does not bend itself to fleeting desires or momentary whims, and that is why most people never experience what they might call miracles. A wish, quickly thought, and just as quickly forgotten, is nothing more than a ripple that fades before reaching the shore. What truly creates impact is persistence, holding a vision with such consistency and emotional depth that it becomes more than thought, it becomes state. This is where transformation begins, when imagination is no longer casual entertainment, but a steady current that reshapes the very landscape of your life. The hidden truth is that reality is not impressed by what you hope for once in a while. It responds to what you embody again and again, until the line between inner and outer collapses. Think of it like planting a seed. Tossing a handful of seeds into dry soil and walking away rarely produces anything, but choosing one seed, planting it with care, watering it daily, and giving it sunlight, ensures that life emerges. The same principle applies to imagination. The scattered wishes that people carry are like seeds never nurtured, forgotten before they take root. Persistence, however, is the water and sunlight of the inner world. It is what teaches your subconscious to accept an image as natural, and once that happens, the external world begins to organize itself around it. This is not chance. It is design, and this design is not mystical in the sense of something vague or intangible. It is engineering, vibrational engineering. Just as an architect calculates the stress points of a bridge, or an engineer measures frequencies to tune a machine, your imagination operates on principles of resonance. When you hold an image with intensity, you create a vibration within yourself. That vibration communicates with the field around you, attracting, aligning, and synchronizing events that match its frequency. This is why Neville insisted that imagination is law, because it works with the same reliability as any science, only in a realm most people have never been trained to see. Behind the scenes, this is the real journey. You are not battling luck, not begging for external approval, not waiting for probabilities to turn in your favor. You are engineering an inner state so precise that reality has no choice but to reflect it. This is why those who master this art appear to others as impossibly lucky, when in truth they are simply consistent. Their decisions are not guided by fleeting moods but by sustained conviction. They return to the same inner scene, the same emotional truth, until it crystallizes into form. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because persistence and vibrational engineering reveal something even more extraordinary: the recognition that you are never at the mercy of randomness. You are the architect of resonance, and every image you persist in is shaping the blueprint of tomorrow. Write in the comments, "I choose persistence," if you understand how steady conviction, not passing wishes, is the real force that transforms imagination into reality. Repetition, though often underestimated, is the invisible engine behind every extraordinary outcome. Elena's story illustrates this perfectly. Winning a handful of contests could be dismissed as luck, but winning thousands demands another explanation entirely. Her victories were not the product of random chance, but of consistent imagination, repeated so faithfully that her inner world began to dictate the outer. This is the hidden truth behind repetition. It transforms a desire from a fleeting thought into a living pattern, one that the subconscious cannot distinguish from memory. Each rehearsal is not wasted effort, but a reinforcement, a signal to the nervous system that says, "This is who I am. This is what belongs to me." The impact of this discipline is profound because it redefines how creation unfolds. We've been taught to believe that life happens to us, that we are passive witnesses of chance, left to accept whatever fortune or misfortune arrives at our door. But the mind, when understood in its true capacity, is not a passive observer at all. It is an active architect of results. Every repeated scene, every sustained emotion, is like brick and mortar in the construction of experience. The world you see around you is not random. It is a reflection of what has been rehearsed most consistently within. Behind the scenes of every so-called miracle, there is always a history of repetition. The contest entries, the imagined victories, the daily rehearsals of success, they accumulate quietly until what seemed improbable becomes inevitable. This is why Elena's countless wins cannot be explained away by statistics. Numbers might dismiss her as an outlier, but her journey reveals something else entirely: a mindset of unwavering consistency. And this mindset is available to anyone willing to apply the same persistence. The journey is not glamorous at first. It often feels like nothing is happening. But each repetition carves deeper grooves into the subconscious, and once the image is accepted there, reality has no choice but to comply. This is the hidden architecture of creation. Repetition builds momentum. Momentum shapes belief, and belief becomes the foundation of lived experience. The external world follows not the randomness of chance, but the rhythm of inner consistency. And when you recognize this, the idea of luck begins to lose its grip. Luck becomes too small a word to explain what is really happening. What you once thought of as coincidence reveals itself as deliberate creation, patiently constructed through repetition and persistence. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because once you understand that the mind is an architect rather than a bystander, the question shifts from, will life give me what I want, to what blueprint am I drawing every day through repetition? That shift is the doorway to conscious creation, where the extraordinary is no longer left to chance, but designed with intention. Write in the comments, repetition creates reality. If you can see how consistency, more than any stroke of fortune, is the true force behind transformation. Neville's idea of the scissors of revision is far more radical than it first appears. To most people, the past feels immovable, a fixed sequence of events carved in stone. Yet he insisted that the past is not only fluid but entirely open to reinterpretation, and through imagination, it can be rewritten. When you lie down at night and revisit the day, you hold the power to cut away moments that didn't serve you and replace them with versions that align with your deepest intentions. This isn't about denial or wishful thinking. It's about understanding that memory itself is not a recording device, but a creative instrument, shaping how we perceive reality, and ultimately, how reality continues to unfold. The hidden truth is that memory is astonishingly flexible. Neuroscience even confirms this, showing that every time we recall an event, the memory becomes malleable, subject to edits before being stored again. What Neville understood long before science caught up is that these edits aren't just mental, they ripple forward, creating new cause and effect chains. When you revise an argument into a reconciliation, a failure into a triumph, or a rejection into an acceptance, you are planting new seeds in the subconscious. The past, instead of being a chain that binds you, becomes raw material for transformation. If this perspective feels aligned with you, subscribe now and stay close to content that expands your mindset. This practice has an extraordinary impact because it dismantles the illusion that we are trapped by what has already happened. Imagine carrying years of regret, shame, or perceived mistakes, only to realize that within the workshop of imagination, those moments can be reshaped, reauthored, and infused with entirely new meaning. This doesn't just soften the weight of memory, it recalibrates the trajectory of your future. People often underestimate how decisions made under the shadow of old wounds shape their path. By revising those wounds, you dissolve the emotional charge, and in doing so, alter the hidden blueprint that guides your choices. Behind the scenes of success stories that look like miracles, you will almost always find this quiet, persistent practice of revision. It is not dramatic. No one else sees it happening. Yet, in the privacy of your own mind, you are conducting the most powerful kind of surgery, cutting away what no longer serves, and stitching together a reality that better reflects who you truly are. Memory, then, stops being a prison and becomes a palette. The colors you choose to paint with determine not just how you remember yesterday, but how you will experience tomorrow. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because once you grasp that time itself is malleable. The way you relate to your past, your present, and your unfolding future begins to change forever. Write in the comments, I am rewriting my story. If you can feel how revision holds the power to dissolve limitation and reshape destiny itself. What's fascinating is how modern research has begun to uncover the mechanics behind what mystics like Neville described decades ago. Joe Dispenza's studies, for instance, reveal that the brain doesn't really care whether an experience is real or vividly imagined. Neurons fire in the same patterns, the body releases the same chemistry, and the nervous system responds as though the event actually happened. This discovery dismantles the old idea that imagination is nothing more than fantasy. In truth, it is the first stage of creation, where the unseen begins to solidify into form. When you close your eyes and live in the scene of your desire, you aren't pretending. You're initiating a neurological rehearsal that primes the body and mind for the outcome you wish to experience. This is where neuroplastic reprogramming becomes so vital. The brain is not static, locked into old pathways formed by past experiences. It is plastic, moldable, ready to be rewired through repetition. Every imagined memory, when revisited with enough clarity and emotional intensity, starts to carve new grooves in the nervous system, gradually replacing the old patterns that once seemed inescapable. What you practice inwardly becomes what you live outwardly, because the subconscious accepts the rehearsal as reality and begins to shape your behavior, decisions, and perceptions accordingly. This is why people who consciously rehearse abundance, health, or success often find themselves making different choices without even realizing it. Their nervous system has already adapted to a new identity. It's a kind of behind-the-scenes engineering, where your inner theater becomes the training ground for your outer life. The hidden truth is that most people unknowingly rehearse limitation every day, replaying scenes of failure, rejection, and disappointment until those memories become the blueprint for tomorrow. Yet with the same energy, the same mental rehearsal, you can shift the script entirely. Instead of reinforcing what you don't want, you can immerse yourself in what you choose to create, and the nervous system will reorganize itself to align with that choice. The impact of this transformation extends far beyond personal achievement. When you train your brain to inhabit new states of being, your entire field of perception changes. You notice opportunities that once slipped by unseen. You attract connections that resonate with your new vibration, and your very presence communicates possibility to others. This is why those who commit to revision and rehearsal often describe their lives as a continuous unfolding of synchronicities, as though reality itself is conspiring to affirm their new identity. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because once you realize how imagination physically rewires the brain and body, you begin to see that nothing about your past or present can hold you hostage unless you allow it. Write in the comments, I'm training my mind. If you can feel how this process is already reshaping your understanding of what's possible. When you begin to understand the subtle differences between your states of consciousness, you realize why so much emphasis has been placed on the moments just before sleep and right after waking. These are the gateways of alpha and theta, where the busy chatter of the mind softens and the subconscious becomes impressionable, almost like fertile soil waiting for new seeds. In this delicate threshold, imagination slips past the critical filter of logic and sinks into the deeper layers of your being, where beliefs are stored, and where the foundation of your reality is written. It is here that visions transform into convictions, and convictions into lived experience. The ordinary beta state, the one most people inhabit during the day, is useful for handling tasks, analyzing, and managing responsibilities. But it is limited, tied to what already exists, operating like a manager of past patterns rather than a creator of new ones. In beta, you can solve problems, but you rarely transcend them. Creation requires something different. In alpha and theta, the doors open wide. Alpha feels like a relaxed flow, where the imagination paints more vividly, emotions deepen, and the boundaries between the self and the vision blur. Theta takes you even further, into the dreamlike realm of pure possibility, where symbols, images, and feelings interweave to create the blueprint of tomorrow. What most people overlook is that these states are not mystical abstractions reserved for monks or mystics. They are natural rhythms of the brain, accessible to anyone. The hidden truth is that you enter them every single day, whether you are conscious of it or not. Before you fall asleep at night, as you drift between waking and dreaming, you pass through alpha and theta. The question is not whether you visit these states, but whether you are deliberate about what you bring into them. For many, this is the behind-the-scenes moment where negative memories or worries are replayed, programming the subconscious with patterns they would never consciously choose. But when approached with intention, this same threshold becomes the most powerful tool of transformation, where you can rewrite the script of your life from the inside out. Think of it as a journey from surface-level noise into the deeper waters of being, where imagination has direct access to the machinery of your nervous system. The decisions you make about what to focus on in these states ripple outward with extraordinary impact, shaping not only your personal experiences, but also the way others perceive and respond to you. This is why so many of Neville's students spoke about entering sleep with their desired state already felt as real, because the subconscious does not argue, it accepts, and once it accepts, reality bends to reflect that acceptance. Now I want to go even deeper into this topic, because when you realize how these natural states of consciousness serve as doorways to creation, you begin to see that the true miracle is not in forcing change, but in aligning with the hidden rhythms already within you. Write in the comments, "I enter the gateway," if you can sense how this shift in awareness opens possibilities you may have never considered before. In Theta, you step into what Neville described as the true womb of creation. It is not merely a quiet mental state, it is the fertile ground where the invisible takes root and prepares to become visible. Within this realm, imagination ceases to be a vague picture in your mind and becomes a living presence, a vibrational reality that the body begins to accept as fact. This is why many people who consciously enter Theta speak of their visions feeling more real than ordinary waking life. The edges between what has happened and what has not yet happened blur, and the subconscious, which governs nearly every automatic pattern in your existence, starts to record these impressions as though they are already part of your past. That hidden truth explains why repetition in this state carries such immense impact. Each return to the same image, the same feeling, is like pressing a seal deeper and deeper into wax, until the impression remains unshakable. Breath, often overlooked as a mere biological function, becomes the bridge into this creative womb. When you slow the rhythm of inhaling and exhaling, you are signaling to your nervous system that it is safe to descend. Anxiety, fear, or scattered thoughts keep you locked in the surface level of beta, but deliberate breathing acts like a key turning in the lock. As the body softens, the mind follows, and the transition into alpha and then theta becomes smoother. This isn't just a relaxation technique, it is a form of vibrational engineering, where each breath tunes you closer to the frequency of creation. The simple act of inhaling fully, holding, and then exhaling with presence begins to quiet the noise that distracts you from your inner power. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because once you recognize that breath and imagination work hand in hand, you begin to understand the hidden mechanics behind every ancient ritual, every meditative tradition, and every practice of inner transformation. The sages and mystics may have spoken in poetic terms, but what they were pointing to is this precise intersection between physiology and consciousness, where the decisions you make in your inner landscape rewrite the architecture of your outer world. Write in the comments, "I breathe creation," if you feel how powerful this invisible yet tangible bridge truly is. When Neville and others described the strange feeling of sinking into oneself, they were pointing to a phenomenon where imagination meets physiology in a precise and transformative way. The liquid cement technique may sound unusual, but it functions as a powerful shortcut into surrender. By visualizing a thick, warm substance slowly pouring over the body, covering every inch from the crown of the head to the tips of the toes, the mind begins to convince the nervous system that movement is impossible. Muscles release, tension dissolves, and what remains is a profound stillness where the border between body and imagination becomes blurred. This isn't about forcing stillness, but about allowing the body to agree with the mind's suggestion, a cooperation that mirrors the way creation itself works. Inner suggestion becoming outer reality. It is like laying down a foundation before building a structure, soft, pliable, and ready to receive new form. As you remain in this depth, something subtle begins to happen beneath the surface. Tiny currents of sensation, perhaps a tingling in the hands, a gentle vibration in the chest, or even a faint buzzing around the head, start to appear. This is not random. It is the awakening of what many call the energy body, the hidden self that responds not to logic, but to vibration and intention. These sensations are signals that your awareness is shifting from identification with the physical into recognition of a deeper layer of being. The hidden truth is that what you feel in these moments is the raw material of manifestation itself, the invisible substance through which imagination becomes impact in the tangible world. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because once you realize that these sensations are not distractions, but confirmations, your entire mindset around imagination transforms. Instead of chasing outcomes, you begin to cultivate presence, knowing that every pulse of energy, every wave of subtle vibration, is a sign that the blueprint you hold in consciousness is already impressing itself onto the unseen. Behind the scenes, your nervous system, your electromagnetic field, and even the patterns of thought that used to limit you are reorganizing in silence. If you've ever felt these waves within you, write in the comments, "I felt the shift," so others can recognize that these quiet revelations are part of the journey into true creation. When you step into this internal theater, it isn't simply about daydreaming or entertaining passing thoughts. It is about taking the stage of your own mind and consciously directing the play that unfolds within it. Every detail, every movement, every line of dialogue becomes more than fantasy. It becomes rehearsal for reality itself. The hidden truth here is that the nervous system doesn't argue with what you vividly imagine. It records it, accepts it, and begins to reorganize your responses as though it were already true. That's why the quality of your inner script matters so profoundly. A blurred outline produces hesitation, but a detailed scene, infused with sensory richness, produces conviction. And conviction is the bridge between imagination and experience. The power lies in engaging the senses as if they were your set designers. When you imagine a conversation, don't just see the words, hear the tone, feel the rhythm in your chest, notice the way your body responds to the imagined presence of another. When you picture a place, let the air have weight, let the floor press against your feet, let the scent of the environment fill your lungs. This level of detail may seem excessive, but it's what convinces the subconscious that the script isn't a rehearsal. It's the premiere. The body reacts, the emotions align, and the unseen mechanisms of creation begin to act behind the scenes, drawing circumstances into harmony with the play you've written. This is why those who master this art don't merely think about what they want, they live it inwardly first. They take the role so seriously that the nervous system forgets it is pretend and begins to build the stage outwardly. The impact of this realization is enormous. Your imagination isn't symbolic, it's architectural. Each sensory element is like a beam or a wall, each emotion a foundation stone. When they are placed with care, the entire structure becomes unshakable, and what once seemed like fragile daydreams harden into experience with the inevitability of physical law. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because when you realize that your internal theater is not entertainment but blueprint, you begin to understand why some memories cling to you and shape your mindset without your awareness. If imagination is rehearsed vividly enough, it becomes indistinguishable from memory, and if it becomes memory, it becomes cause. And here is where the most powerful transformations occur. When you recognize that you have the ability not only to create the future, but to rescript the very past that still influences your present decisions. If you've ever felt yourself fully absorbed in a scene you imagined, so real it seemed to leave an imprint, write in the comments, "I lived it within," and let others see how imagination leaves behind more than thoughts. It leaves footprints in reality. Consistency is the quiet architect of transformation, the force that takes fleeting impressions and molds them into something permanent. When Neville spoke of the 21 days of rehearsal, he was not prescribing a ritual for superstition's sake, but revealing a neurological and energetic truth. Patterns consolidate through repetition, much like the grooves carved into stone by a steady stream of water. At first, the current seems harmless, incapable of shaping anything significant. Yet, over time, that persistence alters landscapes. The same law applies to the inner theater of imagination. A single scene rehearsed with fidelity and emotional depth gains weight until it no longer feels like a vision, but an inevitability. What begins as fragile imagery matures into conviction, and conviction is what reality bends to. But alongside consistency lurks a silent adversary: doubt. Doubt is not just a passing thought, it is a vibration in itself, a countercurrent that dissolves the foundations carefully laid in imagination. It creeps in disguised as logic, disguised as caution, disguised as the voice of experience, reminding you of failures past. When entertained, it begins dismantling the theater piece by piece, dimming the lights, scattering the actors, blurring the details of the set you've built. This is why discipline is not about rigidity, but about protecting the sanctity of the inner stage. Discipline is the unseen security guard at the door of the mind, refusing entry to intruders that would sabotage the performance. This battle between conviction and doubt is not won by force, but by focus. Every time you return to the scene, immerse yourself in its detail, and feel it as real. You reinforce the vibrational pattern, making it harder for doubt to dislodge. And there's a hidden truth here. Doubt loses power when you stop wrestling with it. The moment you shift attention back to the vividness of the desired reality, the nervous system obeys the stronger image, and doubt fades like a forgotten dream. This is the essence of training the mind, not to suppress thoughts, but to choose which ones are allowed to take root. The journey, then, is one of loyalty to your chosen vision. It requires the mindset of someone who understands that imagination is not child's play, but creation's workshop. Those who hold the scene despite appearances, who return to it with patience and reverence, begin to notice subtle impacts unfolding behind the scenes of their lives. Coincidences align, doors open, circumstances rearrange, and what seemed improbable begins to move closer with quiet inevitability. This is not luck, it is the fruit of unwavering rehearsal. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because once you see how doubt weakens the architecture of your inner theater, you begin to realize the necessity of mastering the emotional tone that sustains your creations. If conviction is the builder, then emotion is the cement that binds each piece in place. And when you learn to hold that emotional state steady, the stage no longer collapses, but stands as a living reality waiting to unfold. If you've ever noticed how quickly doubt tried to steal the role from your conviction, write in the comments, "I guard my stage," as a reminder that your inner theater deserves protection. There is something profoundly mysterious about the way objects can become silent witnesses of our inner work. A simple piece of paper, a check, a key, or even a letter can hold within it the echo of an entire journey of imagination, as if matter itself conspired to validate the invisible rehearsal that preceded it. When AJ held that check in his hands, it was more than just ink on paper. It was proof that the unseen had crossed the threshold into the visible. And this proof does not merely satisfy the mind, it transforms it. Once you have seen imagination crystallize into matter, doubt loses a portion of its power, because the memory of that manifestation stands as undeniable evidence. But these objects are not just trophies of past victories. They serve a deeper function, operating as living symbols, anchors that tether us back to the vibrational state that created them. Every time you look at them, touch them, or remember the circumstances that brought them into your life, you are re-entering the same energetic field from which they were born. It is like a portal, a shortcut into the state of consciousness that produced the manifestation. And this is where their true power lies. You are not meant to worship the object itself, but to use it as a doorway, a reminder that your inner theater holds the keys to shaping reality. This is why symbols have always carried such weight in human history. From ancient talismans to religious relics, from tribal markings to personal keepsakes, objects have long acted as external confirmations of inner states. The hidden truth is that the object has no inherent power. It only reflects the consciousness projected upon it. Yet in that reflection lies an extraordinary opportunity to stabilize the vibrational pattern and make it repeatable. When you understand this, every physical manifestation becomes a tool in your ongoing transformation. Imagine for a moment how your own life could shift if you began treating the objects around you as allies in your creative journey. That book on your table, the photograph on your wall, the gift you carry from someone you love, each of them can become a deliberate anchor if charged with the right meaning. It is not about superstition, but about mindset. The decisions you make about how to treat these symbols determine whether they drain your energy with nostalgia or empower you with conviction. Behind the scenes of your everyday surroundings, a hidden language is being written, one where matter speaks the story of your imagination back to you. And yet, there is also a danger in misinterpreting these symbols. If you cling to them as though they alone hold the magic, you risk forgetting that the true source is within. The object is a mirror, not the sun. It reflects light, but does not generate it. The real impact comes when you learn to use the mirror as a guide back to the fire of imagination itself. Then, every manifestation you witness becomes fuel for the next creation, expanding the cycle of belief and evidence, cause and effect, imagination and reality. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because when we understand how to use symbols not as distractions but as anchors, we unlock a dimension of creation where the material world stops being random decoration and becomes a coded system of reminders, a system that, when decoded, can accelerate the journey of transformation and make the invisible visible with increasing clarity. If you've ever had an object in your life that seemed to carry more meaning than its form could explain, write in the comments, "This is my anchor," and acknowledge the witness that already walks with you. When an event that once seemed extraordinary begins to repeat itself under similar inner conditions, something profound occurs. What was once labeled coincidence is reclassified as law. This is the hidden truth behind so many ancient teachings. Reality is not governed by random chance, but by patterns that reveal themselves through consistency. The moment you experience manifestation more than once under the same inner alignment, you recognize that you are not playing with luck. You are uncovering the mechanics of creation. And just as a scientist repeats an experiment until the results are undeniable, your imagination requires the same disciplined rehearsal until the extraordinary becomes natural. This shift is transformative because it dismantles the fragile reliance on external circumstances. Instead of asking whether life will favor you, the mindset becomes one of certainty. When the conditions are prepared within, the outer must respond. The impact of this realization is liberating, almost like a veil being lifted. Behind the scenes of what most call reality, there exists a structure as precise as any mathematical equation, waiting for those bold enough to test it. And once tested, it demands responsibility, for knowing that the law responds to you means you can no longer hide behind excuses or randomness. But there is another layer often overlooked, a revelation that many discover only after their first taste of abundance. It is not enough to receive. You must be prepared to sustain. This is what can be called mystical accounting, the unseen but essential practice of inner order. Just as a household without organization quickly dissolves into chaos, no matter how much wealth enters it, the inner life must be structured to hold the energy of prosperity. Otherwise, the manifestation leaks away like water from a cracked vessel. Preparation is as important as reception, because the universe does not merely deliver, it entrusts. Think of it like a stage performance. The spotlight can illuminate you for a moment, but if you are not rehearsed, grounded, and ready, the light will pass, leaving only a fleeting memory. Mystical accounting is the rehearsal behind the scenes, the intentional structuring of your emotions, beliefs, and habits, so that when the manifestation arrives, it has a foundation strong enough to remain. This symbolic organization might appear subtle, but its impact is immense. It turns a windfall into lasting wealth, a breakthrough into a permanent transformation. The hidden truth is that abundance is not just about accumulation, but alignment. Wealth, whether material, emotional, or spiritual, follows the same principle. You must become a custodian of the state that attracted it. That means decisions, no matter how small, carry weight. Each act of gratitude, each disciplined thought, each alignment of intention is part of a ledger that either strengthens your capacity to hold abundance or weakens it. And in this sense, Every one of us is keeping a mystical record, an internal balance sheet that determines whether the treasures we call forth remain or vanish. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic because when we explore how preparation shapes permanence, we uncover a hidden dimension of manifestation where wealth ceases to be a fleeting visitor and becomes a natural resident of our lives. And if you've ever felt that, something you once gained slipped away too quickly, write in the comments, "I am ready to sustain," as a declaration of your decision to build the foundation that abundance requires. When the power of manifestation is spoken of, it is often framed as if the ultimate goal is accumulation, more wealth, more opportunities, more experiences. But the hidden truth is that manifestation stripped of purpose leaves behind only emptiness. It is like pouring water into a vessel without a bottom. No matter how much flows in, nothing remains. What transforms manifestation from mere acquisition into lasting fulfillment is the alignment of desire with service, contribution, and a greater sense of meaning. When what you call forth into your life is not just for the self, but for the impact it creates in the lives of others, a new dimension opens. The energy sustains itself because it is no longer bound by the narrow walls of individual need. Instead, it becomes part of a larger current, and in that current, abundance circulates with ease. This is why some people can achieve remarkable success yet feel hollow, while others, with seemingly less experience, profound satisfaction. The difference is not the scale of the manifestation, but the alignment of the intention behind it. A mindset rooted in service has a magnetic quality. It attracts not only results, but also the sense of wholeness that results were supposed to bring in the first place. Purpose acts as the anchor that ensures the creations of the mind do not dissolve into mere symbols of status, but instead become stepping stones in a meaningful journey. Behind the scenes of every authentic manifestation is this ethical alignment, and it is what makes the difference between a life of constant hunger and one of deep nourishment. Yet purpose, though essential, does not exclude practice. In fact, it demands it. Just as a musician does not wait for the grand performance to rehearse, the mind must be trained daily in small, deliberate acts of creation. These micro-manifestations might appear trivial at first glance: a seat on a crowded train, a conversation flowing smoothly, a parking space opening just as you arrive. But each one carries weight far beyond its surface. They are the rehearsals where discipline and imagination converge, strengthening the nervous system's acceptance of your creative authority. The impact of these seemingly small exercises compounds over time, carving deep grooves in the subconscious, grooves that later hold the weight of greater manifestations with effortless stability. Think of it as building a bridge. Each plank, no matter how small, contributes to the overall strength of the structure. The daily decisions to visualize, to align emotion with thought, to breathe life into an image, are those planks. And when the day comes to walk across with a greater intention, whether it is financial abundance, a profound relationship, or a transformative opportunity, the bridge holds. Without these daily practices, the grand attempts often collapse under doubt or inconsistency. But with them, the extraordinary feels natural, almost inevitable, because the foundation has already been laid. Now, I want to go even deeper into this topic, because understanding how ethics and small practices intertwine reveals a hidden architecture of manifestation where both purpose and discipline converge to create results that are not only real but lasting. And if you've ever felt the difference between achieving something and truly being fulfilled by it, write in the comments, "Purpose is my anchor," as a reminder of what gives meaning to everything you create. If you stayed with me all the way until here, it probably means this message resonated with something deep inside you. And that's why I want to invite you to stay close. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss the kind of insights that keep adding real value to your own journey. If you felt a connection with what we explored, let me know in the comments by writing, "I'm with you until the end," so I'll know you're part of this circle that understands the hidden depth of these teachings. And if at any point you caught yourself reflecting in silence, that's already a powerful sign. Leave a like on the video so this energy stays alive between us. There's a video right here that beautifully complements everything we've just uncovered. Click and continue with me over there.